The Christmas table was beautifully set, the air filled with the smell of roast turkey and pine. My grandfather, Arthur, raised his glass with a warm smile aimed directly at me. "So," he said, his voice cutting through the gentle chatter. "Are you happy with the home I got for you?" Every single fork in the room froze on its way to a mouth. I just stared, completely lost. What home? For a long second, the only sound was the crackle of the fireplace. Then my mother's grip on her wine glass failed. Red wine spread across the white tablecloth like a stain. My grandfather's smile disappeared. He pushed his chair back, the scrape of wood on wood tearing through the quiet. "Show me the deed. Right now." That was the sound of our family breaking apart. But what no one at that table knew, not even my grandfather, was that this dinner hadn't been an accident. I had set the stage for this moment myself. 2 weeks before that night, my biggest worries were much simpler. I was thinking about the rent I couldn't pay and if eating instant noodles for the third night in a row was a problem. My little apartment in the city was a place where the heater was louder than my own thoughts. But it was the one thing I paid for myself. My parents loved to remind me how being on my own builds strength. They'd send these messages right after posting photos from their fancy ski trips or with their new car. My mom's texts always started nice and ended with a little cut, like, "You really need to learn how to handle your finances like we do." I never wrote back. Staying quiet was the only way to keep things calm. The only one who never made me feel like I was less than enough was my grandpa Arthur. He was the real deal, everything my parents pretended to be. He was a man of his word, fair, and had a quiet kind of strength. When I was in my early 20s, he told me, "One day, I'll make sure you have a real place to call your own." Back then, I thought he was just talking about giving me good advice, not an actual building. He was a planner, not someone for big surprises. So when he called me a week before Christmas, I immediately noticed something different in his voice. He said, "This year, I have a very special present for you." I just laughed. "Grandpa, you don't need to get me anything." He had a low chuckle. "Oh, it's already taken care of." I didn't think much more about it until later, scrolling on my phone and seeing my parents' photos from a glamorous dinner in wine country, all shiny smiles with a caption that read, "Family is everything." It felt like a punchline to a joke I didn't understand. I told my best friend, Maya, about the call. We were at our usual coffee shop, both staring at our screens. She gave me a look. "A special gift, huh? Maybe he finally figured out you deserve more than their hand-me-downs." I smiled, but it felt weak. Or maybe it's another life lesson wrapped up in pretty paper. I didn't know it then, but the gift Grandpa was talking about wasn't under a tree. It was waiting to tear apart everything I believed about my family. A few days later, I was looking for a client's invoice on my computer when a strange email popped up. The subject line read, "Congratulations on the sale of the property on Cedar Drive." At first, I thought it was junk. Then I saw the street name. Cedar Drive. My heart gave a hard, painful thump. That was the street Grandpa had pointed out to me years ago, saying a house there would be perfect for me, full of good light. I read the email again, my throat feeling tight. Sold. But sold to who? I called my mom, trying to sound casual. "Hey, random question. Did Grandpa ever buy a place on Cedar Drive?" There was a silence on the line that lasted just a little too long. Then her voice became light and airy. "Oh, that old thing? No, the market went down that year. Remember? Nothing ever happened with it." I spoke slowly. "It's just, I got this weird email." I heard her breath catch. "Glenn Evans, you shouldn't be poking into things that aren't yours. You always let your imagination run wild. And just like that, she ended the call. I sat there, my phone going silent in my hand, trying to understand what had just happened. For the first time, her calm voice had sounded like panic. That night, sleep wouldn't come. Every little noise in my apartment felt like it was whispering, "They lied." I started digging and eventually traced the email back to a real estate agent's office in a nearby town. The next morning, I called them, pretending to be a buyer interested in recent sales. The agent confirmed it. The house had been sold 3 years ago under the name Robert Evans. I went numb. My parents had sold it and never said a word. When Grandpa called later to confirm our Christmas dinner plans, I almost told him everything, but something inside me locked up. I wasn't ready to be the one to shatter his world. Instead, I said, "Of course I'll be there. I'll bring the pie." After I hung up, I looked out at the snow falling, the city lights blurring through my window. Maya texted, asking if I was okay. I wrote back, "I think my parents took something that was meant for me." She replied, "Then make sure they're the ones to give it back." I didn't text back. I just closed my computer and said to the empty room, "Okay. Then Christmas dinner it is." 3 days before Christmas, I drove across town in the freezing rain to my grandfather's office. His assistant, Helen, greeted me with her usual calm smile, though I saw a flicker of something else in her eyes. Worry, maybe. "I just wanted to drop off his gift early," I said, trying to sound normal, though my hands were shaking. She paused, then lowered her voice. "Mr. Evans was sure you'd already moved in." For a second, the words made no sense. "Moved in where?" Helen looked around, then opened a drawer and slid a manila folder across the desk. "He talks all the time about how proud he is that you have your own home. The one on Cedar Drive." The world seemed to tilt. "Cedar Drive," I repeated. She nodded, her voice a near whisper now. "He bought it 2 years ago. Said it was in your name. Said your parents handled all the paperwork." Her eyes were soft. "He truly believes you've been living there." I swallowed hard. Can I see something?" She hesitated, then quietly handed me a photocopy. The original deed had my name on it, clear as day. Stamped right behind it was a sale agreement, signed by Robert Evans. My father's signature. The cold air outside felt like a punishment. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles were white. I wanted to scream, but the only sound was the steady click-click-click of my turn signal I'd forgotten to turn off. That night, I called Maya. "They sold it," I said, my voice flat. "They took what was mine and let him think I had it." She was quiet for a moment, then asked softly, "So what are you going to do?" "I'm going to dinner," I said. The next morning, I met with David Clark, my grandfather's lawyer for many years. I didn't tell him the whole story, just enough to make his expression turn serious. "You'll be there, right?" I asked. He studied me. "Are you looking to protect your grandfather, or to expose your parents?" "Both," I answered. In that order. When I left his office, snow was falling, covering the city in a clean, white blanket. But I knew better. Nothing was clean about this. Christmas night arrived. The Evans family was gathered around a table that was too big for how little real connection was left in the room. The chandelier sparkled, reflecting the fire in the marble hearth. The laughter sounded rehearsed. I sat across from my parents, half listening to them talk about their latest investments and trips. Every word felt like sandpaper on my skin. Grandpa sat at the head of the table, the only one whose smile seemed genuine. He had always been the solid center of our family. I wondered what would happen when he discovered that the center was built on lies. He lifted his glass. "To family," he said, his voice warm. My mother smiled back, her red lipstick bright. "Always." Our eyes met for a second, and I saw something in her look, something forced and false. I had to bite my tongue to stop the words from rushing out. Dinner went on with polite, empty conversation. Grandpa asked me about my work, if I was staying busy. "It's fine," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Not as profitable as selling property that belongs to someone else, though." My mother's fork hit her plate with a sharp clink. "I'm sorry, what was that?" "Nothing," I murmured, but the heat was rising in my chest. Grandpa gave a soft chuckle, trying to lighten the mood. "You've always been quick, Glenn." Then, almost like he was testing the wind, he leaned forward a little. "By the way, are you happy with the home I got for you?" For a heartbeat, I thought I'd heard him wrong. All conversation died. The room was utterly silent. I blinked. "What home?" The question cut through the air like a knife. My mother's hand slipped, tipping her wine glass. The red liquid spread across the tablecloth. My father's face turned to stone. Grandpa's eyes moved between us, confusion turning to something darker. "What home?" I repeated, louder this time. Grandpa set his glass down carefully, the sound final. His face changed, disbelief turning into cold anger. "Show me the deed. Now." My father was the first to speak, his voice shaking. "Dad, this really isn't the place for this." "It is exactly the place," Grandpa cut in, his voice calm but sharp as a blade. "I trusted you to handle that for her." My mother's voice broke. "Arthur, please." "We only ever, Claire," he said, his eyes locking onto hers. "Don't insult me with another lie." Every sound in the room was suddenly loud, the fire, the clock, my own heartbeat. Helen, the assistant, appeared from the side door as if she'd been waiting. She handed my grandfather a brown envelope. He didn't even look at it before he said, "David." David Clark walked in, his briefcase in his hand. "Mr. Evans," he said evenly. "You asked me to look into some transactions this week. I think you need to see this." He opened his briefcase and spread documents across the table. I watched the color drain from my parents' faces. David pointed to the first page. "This is the original deed. Buyer, Glenn Evans. Signed and notarized." He turned to the next page. "And this is the sale, 3 months later, by Robert Evans. The money transfer is confirmed right here." Grandpa's hand trembled as he touched the signatures. "You sold her home," he whispered. "The one I bought for her future." My father swallowed hard. "We were managing it for her. She wasn't ready." "Ready for what?" I snapped, my anger finally breaking free. "Ready to have something that was mine? To stop needing your permission for everything?" My mother reached for me, desperate. "Sweetheart, we did it for you. You were having a hard time. We thought," I pulled my hand away. "No. You thought you could get away with it." The air in the room was thick and hot. Grandpa stood up, slow and deliberate. The sound of his chair scraping the floor made everyone flinch. "From today onward," he said, "you do not speak for her. Ever." No one made a sound. My mother started to cry, her makeup running down her face. "Arthur, we never meant to hurt her." "But you did," he said, his voice quiet but firm. And you did it while sitting at my table, smiling. He reached into his jacket and took out a small velvet pouch. A silver key slid into his palm. He looked at me. It was always meant to be yours, Glenn. It still is. He placed the key in front of me. My hands wouldn't move. My throat was too tight. My father stood up suddenly, his chair falling over behind him. "We're your family," he shouted. "You can't just cut us out over a misunderstanding." Grandpa's eyes were hard. "You're right. You are family. But you are not my family anymore." The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. My mother sobbed. "Glenn, please, tell him we can fix this." I finally looked up, my gaze steady. "You can't fix something you already sold." David gathered the papers back into his briefcase. "We'll begin the legal process in the morning," he said. Helen stood quietly behind my grandfather, her face impossible to read. Grandpa let out a long, tired breath. "Merry Christmas," he said softly. He wasn't talking to them. He was talking to me. He put a hand on my shoulder, the same hand that had once steadied mine when I was learning to write. "You always could see the truth of a situation," he murmured. My mother hid her face in her hands. My father turned away, muttering. It didn't matter anymore. Their words had lost all their power. I stood up, the key cold in my hand, and looked around the room. The Christmas tree lights twinkled. The air smelled of pine and something sour, like betrayal. I thought revenge would feel exciting, but it just felt quiet, like the last note of a sad song. When I walked outside, the cold air stung my cheeks. Snow was falling again, soft flakes settling on the porch railing. Behind me, through the window, I could see Grandpa still standing tall, a shadow against the warm light of the house. Inside, my parents looked small and trapped in their chairs, prisoners of the lies they had told. I whispered to myself, almost like a prayer, they always said I needed to earn my place. I guess I just did. And with that, I walked out into the snow, feeling free, cold, and completely awake for the first time in years. The next morning, the house was silent. No one mentioned what had happened, but you could feel the weight of it in every room. My parents' car was gone before the sun was fully up, just 2 lines in the snow leading down the driveway. They didn't say goodbye. Grandpa found me in the sunroom, sitting with a cup of coffee that had gone cold. He moved slower than usual, the kind of slowness that comes from a deep disappointment. I trusted them too much, he said quietly. I thought providing for everyone would keep them honest. I looked up at him. You believed in the best of them. That's not a fault. He shook his head. You reminded me what real integrity looks like. He reached into his jacket and slid an envelope across the table. Inside were new documents, my name printed clearly at the top. The title deed, with no missing signatures this time. I had David redo everything last night, he said. It's official. The house is yours. What happens with them is a separate matter. My throat felt tight. Grandpa, I don't even know if I want it anymore. He gave me a tired but warm smile. You don't have to live in it right away. Just know it's there. Just like I'll be, whenever you need me. Later that week, word got around in our city's business community. Robert and Claire Evans had been quietly removed from a few important boards. The Evans family name, once so shiny, now had a crack in it. But nobody on the outside knew the real reason. I didn't feel like I had won some great victory. I didn't feel spiteful. I just felt lighter. Having coffee with Maya, I told her, I didn't win anything. I just finally stopped losing pieces of myself. She nodded, understanding. That's the only kind of winning that matters. When I left the cafe, the snow had melted, leaving the sidewalks wet and shiny. For the first time in a long time, I walked without feeling like I needed to look behind me. A week later, I drove to Cedar Drive. The street was peaceful, lined with tall evergreen trees wearing caps of snow. The house was there, with white walls and big windows, a front porch that looked like an open invitation. I got out of the car, the air crisp and clean, and held the silver key up in the morning sun. For the first time, I didn't feel like just someone's daughter or someone's failure. I felt like myself. I turned the key in the lock and whispered a single word. Home. Sometimes justice isn't about a loud fight. Sometimes it's just about finally standing your ground. As the door swung open, a wave of quiet warmth washed over me. This wasn't just a house. It was a promise kept. A truth finally spoken. It was the beginning of a life where I answered to no one but myself. If you've ever had to stand up for what's rightfully yours, you know that the hardest battles are often fought at the family table. Thanks for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, share your own thoughts down below. And for more real stories about family, truth, and finding your way, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. See you in the next one.